Hey guys, my name is Josh Smith. I am the president of Montana Knife Company, and I'm here to talk to you today about the best American-made hunting knives of 2023 that we don't make. These are of other manufacturers out there, of other knife companies, and it might seem a little crazy to you that we as a knife company, me as the president of Montana Knife Company, would be talking to you about other knife makers, knife companies, and other knives. But let's face it, if you love knives, you love all kinds of knives. And I was raised by knife makers. The only reason I got to where I got as a knife maker is because of other knife makers teaching and sharing with me. And as we grow our brand, I also want to highlight some other brands that are doing a great job and other knife makers and brands that I respect. So let's jump into this. The first knife company I want to talk to you about is WINKLER Knives. Dan and Karen WINKLER. I have been going to knife shows with them since I was literally in high school. We would share a table next to each other, not share a table, but we had tables next to each other at the New York Custom Knife Show back in the 90s. Dan is an amazing knife maker. Karen does an amazing job on the leather work on their sheaths. I encourage you to check out their knives. A lot of their heritage style, kind of reproduction type work is absolutely amazing. But in addition to that, they do more of a semi-mass production WINKLER knives. A lot of people know actually Dan WINKLER and WINKLER knives from Jack Carr's series with this tomahawk that he carries, the Navy SEALs carry. WINKLER Knives is a big supporter of our US troops, of our military. They're just great people. Their Highland Hunter is a great little hunting knife. That's one that I'm kind of highlighting here today. It's an awesome little blade. Check that out. WINKLER Knives, awesome people. The second knife company I want to highlight today is Chris Reeves Knives. Chris started making knives in South Africa back in the 80s. He's just an amazing knife maker, was inducted into the Knife Making Hall of Fame, Blade Magazine Hall of Fame. They are based out of Boise, Idaho. They're just a highly reputable, very highly sought after, very high quality, very well respected knife company. I don't personally really know Chris well. I think I've met him, but I've seen his knives. I have a lot of my own collectors that have his knives. They do a really nice job. And the knife that I kind of want to highlight of theirs is, and I don't know if I always say this right, the Inyoni knife. It's small, it's magna cut, it's a very useful little knife, handy little blade. But again, another reputable company with good people, good product, and based just over the mountains from my house, about 8 hours over the mountains in Boise, Idaho. The third knife company I want to highlight today is BRADFORD Knives, owned by Brad Larkin and his wife out in Washington. Again, just really good folks. Brad does a lot of work for other knife companies in the industry with his blade grinding business. High quality knives, American made, uses some premium material like the Magna Cut. Just a really good guy. I've gotten to know him well, and I really like him, and I really like what he does with his knives. He's a very knowledgeable person when it comes to heat treat, edge geometry, blade grind, stuff like that. Very, very good company. The knife of Bradford's I like is their little Guardian, it's a little 3.5 inch kind of sheep's foot blade. It's unique, it's interesting, it's a cool little knife. Check that out and check out BRADFORD Knives. The fourth knife company, and again, these aren't necessarily in any particular order, but the fourth knife company that I want to talk about is RANDALL Knives. Bo Randall started Randall Knives back in 1938. Maybe one of the most famous knife makers ever. Randall Knives is one of the most popular and most well-known brands, highly collectible knives, and they have passed that company down kind of through the generations. Really a cool company based in Florida. And again, just knives that I've seen at knife shows for the last 30 years that I've been traveling around. Highly reputable, very nice stuff, American made. And the model that they've got is, I think, model 20. It's a Yukon Skinner. It's a cool blade. It's a unique shape. Puts a lot of pressure and emphasis on the edge, the cutting of the edge there. Again, just a cool knife and a really cool knife company. And if you find an old Randall knife, you have a collector's item that's worth a lot of money these days. All right, the fifth knife company and more knife maker that I want to talk about here is PEñA Knives. Enrique PEñA out of Texas. He learned from the legend and now Hall of Famer, recently minted Hall of Famer, Bill Ruppel. He learned in the slip joint world under Bill. He does lots of different mechanisms now. Enrique's knives are flawless. They're absolutely beautiful. They're highly sought after. They're hard to get. He has a few on his website here and there. He makes them and he sells them. Enrique is a machining genius. He's a young guy that's absolutely an absolute rock star in the knife world. Very, very cool knives. And his Caballero folder is super cool. I've held one in my hand. That guy is somebody to watch, somebody to collect and keep your eye on going forward. And you'll see, when you go to his website, you'll just see the quality. PEÑA Knives. Enrique is an awesome guy. And actually came up to my hammer in here in Montana and taught 1 year back when he was just getting started. Very, very good guy and very good knife maker. All right, the sixth knife company I want to talk about, and again, more of a knife maker than a big company, is Richard Rogers, Richard Rogers Knives. Richard and Sally Rogers are people, again, that I was going to knife shows with back in the 90s. They are ranchers down out of New Mexico. They work hard on the ranch, riding horses, dealing with cows. Drought conditions a lot of times, just everything that ranchers deal with. But Richard is a design genius and a machining genius. His knives are so cool, so well designed. Maybe one of my absolute favorite makers when it comes to just design stuff. I have to resist going and looking at his stuff because I don't want to subconsciously copy what Richard is doing. I love everything that guy does. I love the people. They're fantastic people. His 4F folder, I think it's called, it's super cool. He's got fixed blades and folding knives, cool mechanisms, and really does a lot of work with his machine work on surfacing the handle and putting really cool designs on the handle. I think he's done some collaboration stuff with some other knife companies with some designs and whatnot. But go check out Richard and Sally Rogers, Richard Rogers Knives, and again, great people. All right, so the seventh company I'm going to highlight is a big one. You know, a few of these other people I've talked about are a little bit smaller knife makers. This one is Leatherman. It is hard, as I'm growing a brand, it is hard to not look at a company like Leatherman and just be amazed at what they've built in this country. And they have completely dominated and changed the multi-tool game. No one else really competes in the way that Leatherman does with what they do with their multi-tools. The amount of those that they make every day in a factory in the US, putting American workers to work, is incredible. I do know that they make a lower level, kind of entry level line in China. That's unfortunate. I wish they didn't, but I have to give them respect for what they do in the US, how many people they employ, how high a quality their multi-tools are. I think it's their Signal multi-tool. It's super cool. And a lot of ranchers and farmers and loggers and people that work for a living are carrying a Leatherman in their pocket or on their belt in a holster, and they're using pliers for cutting barbed wire and doing all kinds of things. So Leatherman is an example of a company that we'd love to emulate from the standpoint that they are huge and they built that right in Oregon, which is really cool. Here's another knife company, number 8, KOENIG Knives. I have personally not actually met these people, but I've kind of watched from afar. They are, again, just over the hill in Boise, Idaho. But from everything that I've seen, following them on social, seeing some of their knives and whatnot, those guys are making really, really nice stuff, and they just keep upping their level. Their areas folder is super cool. They're setting up and growing their manufacturing process. You'll see one of their main machinists there. Can't remember her name right now, but she will post Instagram posts about what they're doing in their machine shop and whatnot. She clearly knows what she's doing. They are, from what I've heard from other people that I know, really good folks. They're innovative. They're doing really cool stuff. And again, if you look at the KOENIG knives, every knife that I've seen of theirs is as clean as can be, super high quality, higher price point, you know, edging up towards that more collectible end. But I have a lot of respect for what they're building down there. And again, it's just over the hill in Boise, so we're almost neighbors. So guys, that's kind of a list of some knife companies out there that I think are doing a great job, that are American made. Most of those companies aren't just individual knife makers, but they're a little bigger than an individual maker. They're a small to medium sized company, and then obviously in Leatherman's case, a massive company. What I really like about all those companies, except for a couple that I don't know personally, is the people within those companies. You know, WINKLER Knives and Enrique PEÑA, Richard and Sally Rogers. They're just phenomenal human beings, first and foremost. and then they also make great knives. And some of these people, like Richard and Sally, you know, like Dan and Karen Winkler, you know, I was doing shows with them back when I was literally a kid, and they were nice to me back then, and now I'm old and have gray hair, and their businesses have all grown, and I just have a lot of respect for them. So I hope more companies and more industries will kind of take our lead here, and instead of it being a big competition and a big trash talking thing, every now and then it's good to highlight your competition, and having good competition and something to kind of strive for keeps us moving our game ahead. It levels up everybody's game here. Like people say, the rising tide lifts all boats. The point of this whole thing is buy American made products, whether it's knives or anything else. Support American companies that are putting American workers to work. Thanks for watching.